The Hinterkaifeck Murders, a true horror story. Story 2. The Hinterkaifeck farm was located in a rural area of Germany. However, this gloomy farm has inspired many horror stories in America and is still talked about by horror lovers in popular culture. In 1922, the Gruber family and the workers living on the farm could not get up one morning. A peaceful day turned into tragedy. In settlements in America, the Hinterkaifeck events began to be discussed years later in horror books, movies, and internet forums. It was a real, terrifying mystery. The family and the farm workers were the victims of a killer who left no trace behind. Although the incident actually took place on German soil, it became a great source of fear for the American people. Our story goes back to the mid-1960s, to the backstreets of New York. James Harris, a historian and horror researcher, immigrated from Germany to America to investigate the Hinterkaifeck murders. His aim was to include this terrible mystery of Europe in a book and to attract the attention of the public. However, from the moment he started his research, strange things started to happen. One evening, while James was working alone, an old photograph was placed among his booklets. The photograph looked like an old picture of the Hinterkaifeck farm. However, on the back of the photograph was an inscription written by an unidentified man. "The dark night has swallowed us all. Something will be left behind." After reading this inscription, James sensed something strange. However, he did not say a single word to anyone about the events, ghosts and mysteries on the farm on the other side of the river. The historian who could not spend the night. One evening, James was working alone in a shed. He had only one thing on his mind: the fear experienced by the dead in their last moments on the Hinterkaifeck farm. At that moment, a cold wind blew through the door of the room. When he slowly turned his head, he saw a blurred silhouette coming from an old attic window. At that moment, he was not alone on the old farm. He realized that the wind was also being guided by an unknown entity along with him. He quickly closed the door, but it had become impossible for him to spend that night. One night, one voice. After that night, James became more determined to unravel the dark secrets of the Hinterkaifeck incident. One day, he came across an old newspaper that told of the tragedy that had taken place on the farm. The news reported that in the corners of every room on the farm, family members were seen looking terrified as if they had been lost in the river. However, there was one detail that shocked James the most: a room on the farm that looked like an ordinary place, but actually served as a kind of passage. The old newspaper gave gossip about another being behind the mysterious room on the farm. One morning, with a photo of an old farmhouse in hand, James continued his research to write this story. But at that moment, the phone rang. There was a man on the phone whose voice he did not recognize. "James Harris, you are taking care of us, but there are people waiting for you around here too," the man said. The voice continued in a threatening tone. James hung up, scared but deciding to let that be enough. The moment when fear rises. One day, James decided to go to an old friend's house to spend the night. However, that night, close to dawn, he heard the sound of a child crying strangely. Then, a man appeared at his friend's house. A man whose face was barely visible, but felt like he was part of another body. At that moment, James was filled with fear. Everything had changed in an instant. There was something behind. At the end of the story, as James' investigations continued, he discovered the existence of a real curse. Events like the Hinterkaifeck farm had become a great mystery not only for a town, but also for American researchers and horror lovers. And James Harris could not reveal the truth, because at that moment he realized this story was not only untold, but actually happened. Thank you very much. If you subscribe to my channel and like the videos, you can check out my channel for other videos.